Welcome back. I'm talking to Max Burns about the 1997 Sheffield UFO incident. Now then, Max, what are your plans for the future with regards to this case? Because you're not finished with it yet, are you?
No, this is an ongoing investigation. In February, I'm going to be going up to the site where the jet engine parts were recovered. I'm going to be obviously taking cameras and taking measurements because the trees won't have any leaves on them, and all the last season's leaves will have vanished from the ground. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go and investigate the crater, film the tree damage, which is still visible. I'm going to have a look at the age of the trees in the crater and around the crater, take some metal detectors up there and see if we can recover some more parts. Mm-hmm. And take it from there. Now I've also got I've been waiting quite a while now. The part numbers from the engine parts have been passed on to a man at Rolls-Royce.
So some of the parts that you've recovered have actually got part numbers on them, have they?
Yeah, I've got all the part numbers. Through the part numbers, should be able to trace what engine it's from, and then by default what aircraft it's from.
But they're not going to give you access to that database of information, though, are they?
No, I've been trying to find this out personally myself, but now I'm waiting on a man that works for Rolls-Royce right, to come back to me, and hopefully he's going to come up with the answers to what type of jet engine, and therefore certain jet engines are only used in certain aircraft. But I'll refer back to my previous point that only 2 jet aircraft have ever crashed in the Peak District, and both locations are known, and neither of them locations are anywhere near this spot where these titanium jet engine parts have been recovered.
Now, are you in touch with any of the witnesses of this event? Would you be able to get in touch with them? For example, if you wanted to make a film about this, would the witnesses go on camera? Would you be able to speak to the guy who saw the man smelling of aircraft fuel, for example, or do you think he's been silenced?
Jonathan Dagenhart, I think that would really depend on whether he is still in the Royal Air Force. Mm-hmm. If he's now left the Air Force, he might be willing to tell me what happened, and I would be interested in speaking to Jonathan Dagenhart. But the day after he rang me and tried to retract his statement, he was very, very upset. He said he'd been spoken to. He said he'd been spoken to, and he had been informed that I had incorrectly repeated what he'd said, but unfortunately for him, I recorded the interview. Mm-hmm. And he got threatened with his job. He told me that on the phone, and he said Clark had been to speak to him, and then Clark came out with a new statement. But I really would be very interested in talking to Jonathan Dagenhart again. The problem is that, the years have gone by. Many people may have moved from where they previously lived, don't have the same phone numbers, so I could probably speak to some of them again, but it would take a little bit of research to find them.
Well, if we compare it to the Berwyn incident, which took place in 1974, and we made the film in 2011, and we still managed to get witnesses on camera describing what they saw in absolute detail. So I don't think it's too far at all. In 1997, I think you could probably get a good dozen witnesses on camera, and you might even find witnesses come out of the woodwork who you don't know about.
I think that for finding these people again, things like Facebook is an invaluable tool mm-hmm. for locating individuals. So I'm probably
MI5 say that as well, Max.
Yes, well, as far as I'm concerned, it's the whole face. Although I have a Facebook page, let's know it for what it is. Yeah. It's an intelligence trawl. I mean, they don't need to really spy on people anymore because they're putting their lives up there on an hourly basis for the state to see. So.
Perhaps then, if you can identify a lot of these witnesses, I might be willing to help you put some sort of film together and get these testimonies on camera.
Maybe you'd like to come up to the site with me in February.
You might want to think about organising some sort of meet-up or conference, which I'm sure certain people wouldn't want to happen.
Well, get all the witnesses together in Sheffield at a location.
Although some people would say that it's bad to put all the witnesses together because they'll start to pollute each other's stories. Do you know what I mean?
But their testimony is already out there.
You'd need to get the testimonies solidified first. You know what I mean? Before you put them together, I would suggest. Yeah. Are there any other witnesses that you think you might want to speak to now?
I'm very keen to speak to the gamekeeper from the Strines, who he was the gamekeeper for what is just about the only privately owned land in the Peak District, and unfortunately the owner of that land is a person who works for the government. He was visited by a senior police officer the day afterwards, and in fact he was refused entry to the Peak District moorland, even though he would have been the best person to lead the search of the moors, because he knew it like the back of his hand. His wife said that at 10 o'clock that night, and this is a granite built house, I've been to the gamekeeper's lodge, that their house was shaken by the explosion, and when they went outside, the whole area was glowing orange.
Right.
You know, but he was. I've spoke to the wife. He wouldn't be interviewed by me, but he's no longer the gamekeeper at the Strines. He still lives in the area, so I think there's a possibility that he may talk to me, and I would like to talk to him. And
just because I know you haven't actually said exactly where that crash site is, are there other people who know where you suspect it is? Is it commonly known in certain areas, or is it a complete secret?
I hope that just the two metal detectorists and myself know the location.
Right. And just explain, are there any other people in that? Are there many houses there? Are there other people who will have picked up aeroplane parts, do you think? Or
oh no, this is in the middle of a wood.
Right. Right. So do you not think that they would, if they've wanted to cover this up, that they would have, since you've located it, come and combed the area and got rid of all of those?
One of the photographs that he sent me, he said that there was evidence of there had been cutting torches used, because he got a pool of molten steel,
right?
Like the engine had been cut up to be taken away, kind of thing. But there is molten steel as well.
Right. I would say you need to film any more metal detection and film any finds and keep it all documented. So would you consider writing a book about the Sheffield case, Max?
Maybe. I think it has to. I think I need to get the investigation to a conclusion first. Mm-hmm. I mean, let's have an answer instead of having an open-ended, you know, people will believe what they want to believe. I mean, I'm trying to nail this investigation down so that it's like, look, this is what happened, and force the government to admit that the incident happened, because here's the evidence. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately with governments, you have to push them into a corner to get them to admit to anything that they don't want to talk about.
Mm-hmm. He tried to supply further information and get that into your investigation at some stage. Just tell us about that.
Yes, about 2.5 years ago, a number of other people started to try and insert an alleged alien abductee from Sheffield who claims that she was on board the Flying Triangle that night. Now, they never spoke to me about using my research, and I had to intervene and absolutely block them.
So you seem to have focused very heavily on this one case, Max. Did you think that's happened by accident, or do you intend to investigate other cases, or have you investigated other cases?
I've been so busy when I have been investigating this case. You know, obviously I work for a living, mm-hmm. And I've looked at a few cases, but I didn't want to dilute my investigation, where I think that this is probably after the Bentwaters incident, and I'm very close friends with Larry Warren, for example. Mm-hmm. After the Bentwaters case, I would say that this case is the number 2 case that this country has probably had. You know, it may be Berwyn, is they're up as number 2, but it's certainly right up there as a case that many questions need to be answered. I think it's got a lot more mileage to go yet in the investigation, and hopefully, you know, the truth will out in the end.
Right. All right then, Max. Well, thanks very much for talking to me today. And if there's anyone that's been mentioned in this interview, just for the sake of journalistic fairness, who wants to come back on anything that Max has said, any accusations that we've made or what have you, just send me an email to richard@richplanet.net if you want to counter anything that's been said.
Sure. Richard, could I just say to your viewers that you can read it online. Notes from the Borderland was where the article was first published. I wrote a 12,000 word, fully referenced, footnoted article about the behaviour of individuals around the case, not necessarily about the case, and that article is called "The Usual Suspects: An Anatomy of a Disinformation Campaign in Ufology," and everyone should have a read of that.
And just to mention also, it's a very interesting publication, the Notes from the Borderland. I've seen a few issues of it, and it seems to be getting under the skin of what's going on with certain aspects of the intelligence agency.
Oh, it's published by a PhD in politics. His name's Dr. Larry O'Hara. He wrote his thesis on the Bolshevik Revolution. He's a very, very smart man, a top investigator, and Notes from the Borderland is well worth a read.
Right. All right, thanks very much, Max.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks.
And it just remains for me to say, believe none of what you hear and only half of what you see. I'm Richard D. Hall. Good night.